One plays drums, one plays two-string slide bass, and one plays two saxophones at once. Together they call themselves Morphine, and theirs is a sound unlike any other, as you're about to see.
Slide bass and saxophone and drums? The fuck is that?
Low rock. Fuck rock, actually. That's what we call it.
From the back of the room, I hear a voice cry out.
Two-string slide bass, bari sax, and drums.
We'll come on a little closer, let me see.
Really? Those guys may as well have been playing accordion, banjo, and bagpipes.
We've been trying to get them forever. They have the most distinctive sound, I think, in music.
A little closer, I got something to say. Yeah, come on.
You had tapped into what was going on if you were at a Morphine show.
You see, I met a devil named Buena Buena. And since I met the devil, I've been the same, oh no. And I feel alright now, I have to tell you. I think it's time for me to finally introduce you to the Buena 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 good, good, good.
Critics across the country named the latest album by my next guest as one of the best of 1993. Here tonight from Boston to perform a song from Cure for Pain is Morphine.
Mark's mystique really made the band's music and presence even more powerful. And because it's like, who is this man who seems like he's just out of time and out of place? Like, could be from the future, could be from the past.
As close as we were, there was a whole realm of his life that I wasn't aware of.
It's coming to me. Yeah, it's coming to me. Now I think
There was a fascinating contradiction between how private he was and how intimately people felt connected.
I know some people want to make you change.
There was this sense that you did have to overcome a hurdle. You know, if you wanted to be into Morphine, you weren't going to be able to pick up Rolling Stone and read a story about spending the night with them.
And since I met the devil, I've been the same, oh no.
You weren't going to be able to, you know, read a 5,000-word Q&A about Mark's past and about his family.
Frontman of the band Morphine,
Mark Sandman, suffered a fatal heart attack on Saturday, July 3rd, while performing at a music festival near Rome, Italy.
I haven't seen any other bassists do what he does. Unfortunately, I think they may have... Mark left this planet a little premature and before they could really establish a really strong foothold.
It was only after Palestrina that I started to try to figure out a little bit of what type of guy was this guy, you know? And he seemed like a real man.
He also wanted to know how things worked and what family relationships were. He always liked family.
You know, he was the oldest of 4 kids.
Hand over hand up the lifeline. Luckily the knot stays tight. Silhouettes of the two of us climbing up a rope on fire. Trapped in a room in a fortress, running out of air to breathe. Only seconds to go and break free. I didn't think I would breathe.
Even though my younger brother had a lot of medical issues and some other things they had to worry about, but it was always Mark. It was always, we're worried about Mark, we're upset about Mark, we're mad about Mark. What are we going to do about Mark?
It was uncomfortable, it was unpleasant, it was scary because we had 3 younger kids at home. He sort of wanted unconditional love and acceptance, that he didn't have to follow any rules or conventions, that he was being creative, he was an artist. And that was important in its own right, and that's what we should respect.
He could play music on weekends or evenings, and he should consider a real working job during the day. He didn't like that at all. So he offered him a choice. He could either get a job and go to work, or he could go back to college, we'd help him find a college that would accept him, or he could go.
So he went.
So he left in the middle of a blinding snowstorm.
So there was a period of about 6 or 7 years where we didn't know much where he was. We get postcards from him.
He was living in an abandoned miner's cabin.
The Gold Nugget Saloon was our contact point. I don't know how he lived there. It must have been awful.
I remember getting a card or 2 from Alaska. He had a shrimping. He went off to San Francisco, and then he worked in a tuna cannery.
You're a bit of a fisherman, aren't you?
I have fished before, yeah.
Professionally?
Professionally.
And this is before you became a professional musician?
Correct.
And he went all through Central America making...
He spent some time in police, and from there he went on further into South America, through Peru. He lost his passport at
Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu.
Central America, where he was collecting mushrooms that had marijuana in them. He was doing something with mushrooms with marijuana. I don't know.
He ended up in this little makeshift band.
Began to make a name for himself as a musician there. He sent us an article. His whole adventure was so foreign to us that we didn't know how to treat him.
Took a lot of guts, took a lot of spirit, intelligence, and he was searching, I think, while he was doing all that.
But he got sick in Brazil, and that's why he came home.
Better than yesterday, and nothing like today.
He played music with little groups.
And there were a lot of groups, perhaps 800, all trying to climb into prominence.
We developed together the instrument I play. Mark already had his setup going, and but his was a 2-string bass tuned to an A on a bass, and he had a guitar version in his apartment, and I started playing with it, and then we broke out a box of strings and a pair of calipers, and we kind of like experimented and figured out the tension and all that stuff. I think what led to the formation of Supergroup was me just needing a place to live, and Mark being very un-Mark-like and very generous. I mean, I don't mean that he wasn't generous, I just mean that he was a private person, and he generously let me live with him, which was kind of a big deal. So in the process of living together, we just started jamming and playing songs. He saw the world as this big resource that he could soak up. I mean, beyond smoking pot and taking some mushrooms every once in a while and drinking, that was it, really. And the amount that he smoked of the certain kind of weed he smoked, I mean, I would have one taste and I'd be psychotic for 6 hours. And he smoked, 12 joints of that stuff in a day. So his whole system was completely rewired by this intense weed that he smoked. He wasn't self-destructive at all. I think he was just looking to turn the world on a little brighter, and feed his creativity that way. He was looking to sort of shine a light in dark places and go there and mess around with poetry and music.
Billy, let's play a little.
We had all been in rock bands and other things, and we're all looking for something different, and this was a good starting place for something different.
Walked into a strange cafe. No one there's ever heard my name.
Treated Right was how I was first introduced to the genius that is Mark Sandman.
We only ever played out under the name Treated Right. A typical thing, you make a list of names and everybody says, oh, I like that, I don't like that. And Mark liked that because he thought the women would like it.
Be a million little girls around that would just be like, oh.
He was it, he was king of cool. There was real magic to the guy.
I think she likes me, that's what I think. I think she likes me, that's what I think.
With Treat Her Right, we decided if we gave ourselves parameters, we would learn to be creative within those parameters, forcing creativity upon ourselves.
Treat Her Right actually stood out to me, for one of the, I guess it was partly because of the drum kit that Billy was playing at the time, and that it was pared down and simple, but in a way that was raw and somehow bluesy, even though it was popish.
So one of the parameters we set was you have to be able to go to the gig, carry your gear in one trip by yourself. We will have no gear that requires two people to lift.
Billy and I were in another band for a long time before Morphine called Treat Her Right, Trot la bien,
Right.
as they say in some places.
Good advice, men.
Yes, words to live by.
I asked her nicely, can I buy you a drink? I think she likes me, that's what I think. I think she likes me, that's what I think.
One night, I was out, and he looked at me and went, And then he pursued me relentlessly for a couple of months, I think, right? Yeah. I was not very responsive, which I think he liked. He liked the challenge.
Sabine was a little clueless at first, a little hesitant. Something happened. One day he was at the breakfast table.
So you've been doing rock and roll in Boston for a while. What about this band? Why is this band different? What's different about it?
It's good.
Yeah?
Ended up actually starting to work with them as playing bass, the group that became Treat Her Right. At the time, I was doing less and less playing and more producing and recording.
Yeah, I also got involved in a small 8-track studio, which we did 6 of the 9 songs. There's a place called Fort Apache.
It's a
big 8-track studio. Big 8-track studio.
We did a couple of rehearsals, and I said, I don't think you guys really need a bass player. I think it's kind of cooler if you don't have one,
This album, which was distributed in New England, has now been picked up by a company in England as well.
We wanted to do something different. We didn't want to be, You know, we're not going to work in an office.
She warned me twice, but the woman found out that I don't take advice.
Looked up at him as kind of rock and roll older brothers.
Yeah, Demon Records. Yeah.
Demon Records.
They do, over there they do Johnny Copeland and Robert Cray, and a lot of good people. A lot of Elvis Costello's stuff is on Demon or Imp, which is another name.
Yeah, it seems like a really good label.
But listen to my dad, I'd be lying with a big feather bed, but you
You know, it was sort of like a collection of misfits in a way.
take advice. It was rhythm, 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 and blues.
You know, we're kind of like, oh sure, yeah, this is really going to happen. But the latest word today was they decided they want us to add some more songs. They're going to do a new cover and so forth. So they gave us the go-ahead, and they're
the check's in the mail.
The check's in the mail.
We were estranged from our families. We wanted to do something different.
People really rallied. Everybody came together. And he would just be like, Linda, I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna have a great band. I'm gonna be a rock star someday.
But by this time, you know, we were in our early 30s, and it's like the clock is ticking.
Thank you very much. We're going to bring our friend Dana Colley up here now to play a couple of songs on his baritone saxophone. We got a microphone for him and everything. So thanks for coming out. It's the middle of the afternoon, but it feels like late at night somehow. Like we never went to bed.
I remember the last time they played at Jack's, which is right down the street that burned down. And it burned all night. Treater Wright was on stage. The fire came out of nowhere. And they got out with their guitars. That was it. Then he started, he started Morphine. He didn't sulk. He didn't quit. He started another project.
At that time, Mark and I started jamming, and he invited me up to his apartment on William Street in Cambridge.
I was playing my one-string bass. Danny was playing his baritone sax.
I got a head with wings, I got a head with wings. I got a head with wings.
We got a drummer and... No, wait. We thought of a name, then we got a drummer, and then we booked the show. No, we thought of a name, booked the show, and then we got a drummer.
You would not believe if you were here. I got a head with wings.
But unfortunately, the end of '90 was when I first started to feel I was having a problem with arthritis, sort of a stiffness.
When Morphine started playing gigs and recorded Good, basically Jerome recorded most of Good. I played on some songs on Good. And then Jerome started to develop, he got sick.
Above the ground. And the only thing that holds my head to the ground.
And that was sort of the beginning of the end of the whole thing for me, because it never, they played for a while. Billy was filling in doing gigs, which to me made plenty of sense with the Morphine with the Treater Wright connection.
I got a head with, a head with wings.
playing it and recording, and Mark would record everything, and just always playing and coming up with ideas.
Dana actually was a friend who was our roadie for one tour, and he used to play saxophone with us occasionally. And I was a big fan of Dana, and I always wanted to have a different band just with Dana. So now we do it.
And it was really fearless. We were not afraid to play a song we didn't know very well. If it was a riff we'd worked on, no problem, let's give it a go.
And at that time, Ryko Disc had made a mark for reissuing a lot of old vinyl, and they must have got a hold of either a good or our prototype for Cure for Pain, and they offered us pretty much what it amounted to being a distribution deal.
My fingers and I hope to God I knock on wood and pray with all I've got. Cross my bow with a cannonball, I see the writing on the wall.
Hey! And he came to me and he's like, well, I really need a manager. It's a lot harder than I thought. He goes, I can't do this on my own, and I need your help.
Go and what to do, yeah, who to dog, who to ride, and who to hold, forever by your side. Forever by your side. Mary, won't you call my name?
And he really didn't want to hire a big New York or LA manager. He goes, I don't want a big New York manager. I don't want an LA manager. You can't get them on the phone, and then once you do, you don't even really want to talk to them anyways. I want to talk to you, Deb.
Now touring the U.S., Morphine was indeed a pain-free experience for the concert goers we spoke to.
A couple weeks into it, it's like every single show was selling out in advance, and it was just becoming like this real intense buzz thing, like, oh my God, you've got to go see this band. And then when people saw them play live, it just blew their minds, because there's three guys on stage, and no guitar, and it's making this incredible sound.
The combination of the baritone sax and the bass, it's crazy.
I've never seen anybody play two saxophones in one spot. It's pretty incredible. There's no clue where to go and what to do, who to dog and who to ride.
I can't think of another band that sounds like them. That's one reason I like them. And things really started to take off. So, we knew we had something good. And they went to Europe, and it was just, the same thing. Just, people going crazy and, selling out shows. And
Mary, won't you call my, Mary, won't you call my, Mary, won't you call.
We weren't really ready for it in a way. We just didn't expect it. So when it happened, it was like, wow.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our show.
To me, it was like, oh my God, here's somebody that's taken this whole beat thing, Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg and Kerouac, and brought it forward into the present.
Ils sont ce soir à nulle part ailleurs, Morphine.
I mean, those three cats were just so badass.
Yeah, how has the tour been so far for you guys?
We killed them.
You killed them? Billy and Dana and Mark together was an amazing chemistry.
Now you put two
two-string bass, sax and drums together, you'd expect it to sound like a complete and utter shed. Somehow, with our next guest, it sounds fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Morphine. We'll be right back with the Birdman of Las Vegas. Thank you so much for being here right now.
I mean, do you find that you have more money to record albums with, or more money to, or?
No. But we didn't really want more money to record with. If we wanted more money, just to have money, you know.
Yeah.
The word morphine comes from the word Morpheus, who's the god of dreams, and that appealed to us as a concept.
You play the bottleneck on a two-string bass. Is that your idea? Was that your idea to do that?
I guess.
Writing songs, you know, without a guitar, writing songs the way that he did was something that was pretty unique, and I think that, you know, he stands alone.
There's a lot of instruments with just one or two strings all around the world, and it's interesting because every string has every note, and it's really not a limitation at all once you get used to it.
I first met Mark in mid-December 1993, maybe mid to late December 1993 in Brittany, Western France. It was the first time I had ever made music out of the country, so it was my first time playing in Europe. And the show went really well, and I was doing press. And I was out back, and it was freezing cold. And I was doing press and interviews, and all of a sudden, I heard this sound. It was the sound. And I was just like, what in the fuck is that?
I remember the guy from Blues Traveler called up and he was like, I love your record. What's going on? Like, what's going on over there? Or like, we'd get phone calls in the middle of recording where people would go like, how you getting that sound? And we'd say, well, it's a two-string slide bass. And they'd be like, oh, okay. You know, I can't do that.
It's much easier with just two strings because if you have more than two strings, then it's very easy to hit a wrong note. You know?
This is kind of a Mark thing. It was very interesting what he had done with the bass. You know, I have to admit, when I see a band, that's the first cat I focus on. I'm trying to relate, you know, what I would do in their plays. Because usually, you know, from the old days, especially with hierarchy of rock and roll, basses, like where you put the lame dude, kind of retarded friend, sort of like right field in Little League. Like nobody's gonna hit the ball out there.
I started out on one string because that was the easiest, and I gradually promoted myself to two strings, and now that feels pretty complete.
Okay, but people like Doc Wimbish, who's a well-known bass player, should say, I need my four strings.
No, one really is all you need.
One is all you need?
Yeah. This is just extravagance on my part, you know.
What I do on lap steel and what he was doing on the bass was is connected. I mean, there's
it requires a lot of contribution from Billy and Dana to make it work within this format because we can't fall back into traditional roles within the band because of the instruments.
There'd be songs on the set list some nights, you know, Mark would write a set list and there'd be a song on it that you'd just look at and go, what's that? And he'd go, you remember that riff, you know, we played 2 weeks ago? And you're like, you know, we've been playing every day, there's been a lot of riffs, man. Oh, you'll remember. And he'll just start in and you wing it.
See how you can take those jams that you do with your buddies on a porch or around a campfire, get that freedom, that energy of really not trying to do anything or make anything happen from it other than what it can be at that moment, and try to capture that on tape, try to demystify the idea of recording.
You play this bass guitar, but the other instrument in the band, the baritone sax, is quite unusual for rock music as well.
Well, you hear it in rock more than you might think. Prince uses a baritone sax a lot, and Los Lobos use a baritone. Little Richard used to use 2 baritone saxes, so I think it's the most rock of all the saxophones.
It's dark brown. It's got a very deep and dark brown sound.
Dark and rich and very warm in the hands of Dana Colley.
That was smart about him keeping it a trio, so the bass could be prominent like that.
You played in front of about 40,000 people. How did it feel?
It felt good. Good people out there, I could tell. All over Europe, Japan, and all over the U.S., Canada.
Wow, where do you get best received?
You know, it's been pretty good everywhere. Well, hello, Belgium. Very happy to be here. I've seen about 100 meters of your city, and it's just beautiful. Thank you. And we always learn how to say welcome and thank you very much in whatever language that we need to. And
Spanish?
Spanish even, yeah. Portuguese, Norwegian,
yeah,
Italian, whatever, Japanese.
People are also talking about the 60s and the 50s, about you, about the jazz sound, also about the black films and things like that. Do you agree with that, or do you think
Film
it's
noir?
Yeah.
Well, I think that we incorporate some of those elements into our music, but we incorporate a lot of things, and not just music, but books that we read and movies that we see and people that we know and stories that we hear and television programs.
He never went Hollywood. I mean, actually Hollywood went Morphine in some respects because we got so many music licenses and all these film people wanted to use our music in their movies.
Nothing's gonna pull me down. Nothing's gonna shake me, nothing's gonna make me change. That's the way I am, and I'll always be the same. Yeah. Oh, nothing's gonna shake me, nothing's gonna make me change. That's the way.
One of the calls I got was from DreamWorks, and DreamWorks was a brand new record label that had started, with the people from Disney and David Geffen and Katzenberg, and they were interested in kind of creating this new entertainment media conglomerate.
If you could write the soundtrack to any movie, by who would you choose? What director would you choose?
How about Robert Altman? Is he available?
Well, I think so. He's open to a lot of ideas, I think.
Bob, give me a call.
The people they brought in to run DreamWorks Records were fantastic, respected, renowned record executives, which was Mo Austin, Michael Austin, and Lenny Wernicker.
There are a handful of artists that I felt would be a wonderful statement as a record company to sign, especially a young company, where you're trying to make a mark in terms of who you are.
And the second artist they signed was Morphine.
There's a flag I wouldn't fly, a mountain that I couldn't climb. I was always on my way. Nothing gonna shake me, nothing gonna make me change. That's the way I am, and I'll always be the same.
But he wasn't somebody who was just going to pick up and move to Hollywood and just become Hollywood guy. Like, he just wasn't that person, He loved Massachusetts. I really felt like he resonated, and he went back, he went back home, even though he traveled the world and loved to continue to travel and see the world. Like, I think home was something that was really symbolically really important for him.
free now to direct a movie, sing a song, or write a book about yours truly. Oh, I'm so interesting, I'm so great. I'm really just a fuck up and it's such a waste to burn down these walls around me, flexing like a heartbeat. We don't like to speak, don't talk to me for about a week. I'm sorry, it just hurts to explain. There's something going on that makes my guts ache. I got guilt, I got fear, I got regret. I'm just a panic-stricken waste. I'm such a jerk. I was honest, I swear. The last thing I wanna do. Honest, I swear. The last thing I wanna do is ever cause you pain.
But he got sick in Brazil, and that's why he came home.
At the end of his time in Brazil and then Alaska and so forth, he did come back to Boston.
It was an intestinal thing that was affecting his kidneys and some others. It was pretty serious.
And went to get his degree at UMass Boston. Now, I don't know if that was because Bob and Tel urged him to do so, and or what, but he did.
I think he really wanted our approval, and he got it for that, because those were our values. You have to remember that both of us were children of the Depression. Security is terribly important to me, and I didn't see any security in what Mark was doing. He bummed around, and he played music with little groups. He didn't know Roger that well because he was off doing his thing when Roger was growing up. He and Johnny had become good friends at that point. What was Mark doing? losing Johnny, Mark was terribly distraught. He didn't know Roger that well because he was off doing his thing when Roger was growing up. But it was very sad, and he really broke down a lot. And I ached for him.
It really just made everything worse in some ways. Especially when John died, because he was the one, he had a really good sense of humor, and he would always crack a joke when things were tense and sort of lighten things up. And he was a really good mediator in the family. So that was a big hole when he died.
After Johnny died, Mark decided he had to make something of himself, and he was going to do something special. He was going to be somebody special, and that became his goal. He criticized us, rightfully, I guess, that we didn't really listen to his music or to any music. He said, music for you is like a background. When I play music, I want people to listen to my music and my words and what I've done.
Things that happened to him with the death of his brothers, his relationship with his family.
I think he had an extra drive and an extra commitment.
Everybody's lined up at the castle gates. Say goodbye to Johnny, Godspeed him on his way. He's going off to join his father and his father's father too. Going to rest a while now, there's nothing we can do. Bye-bye, Johnny, I'll see you all too soon. Bye-bye, Johnny, I'll see you all too soon. Come on.
It just took him a while to digest the losses maybe of his brothers. And then once he did, he was totally on fire. There's no stopping him. All he did was write all the time.
Bye-bye, Johnny, I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye, Johnny, I'll see you all too soon.
Mark was a very private and a very guarded man. Some say he was a bit elitist. That has been said also of me. Thinkers tend to be private.
Mark Sandman, he was a secretive guy. And there were certain things that were off topic or things that he wouldn't talk about when he was doing press.
Lead singer Mark Sandman, he's just a very slow, laconic person. He doesn't like to explain things too much, likes to talk very slowly. I think he kind of likes subverting the interview process.
How do you like Australia? What kind of impression
cool.
do you have?
It's very easy going.
Easy going. Yeah, those guys are really easy going on. Smiley, happy people.
Well, yeah.
Except for the axe murderers.
Axe murderers.
But even those guys are pretty happy from what I hear.
Oh, I see.
There was an ugly axe murder in Sydney when we were there.
Axe murder, someone
was killed with an axe, yeah.
Oh, really? Wow, you guys were there?
Yeah, right near our hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
I see.
They never found him.
Really? So after all, they're not really happy. No.
Well, there was this one guy with an axe who's unhappy. Was not happy.
And the guy who got wasn't very happy either.
鎌というか木を切るときに使うやつありますよね。あれなんていうんだろうな。鎌っていうの斧か。斧だね。斧殺人が。
You know, I think Mark and I sort of felt that both Billy and I became his surrogate brothers, having lost both Johnny and Roger. And we're both were about Billy's age and my age. Johnny played the saxophone, and I happened to play the saxophone. So I think there was some, surrogate relationship there that I was unaware of until I finally got the story of what happened.
not sure if I felt like it was subverting the interview process as much as making sure it didn't end up going to places that he wasn't interested in going.
It wasn't like he opened up. It was like you just sort of learned these things as you went along.
Tell us a little bit about your music, Mark.
Music?
The first time we met, he did everything he could to make sure that I didn't actually get any of his words on tape. You know, he was walking into the corners of the room and talking in his sort of low growl in which it seems like he's almost swallowing his words. So at the end of that, the first longer interview we had, I came away with the tape of me asking a bunch of, you know, slightly nervous questions and nothing else on the tape.
51% of the time we like to be together. 51% of the time things get better.
It wasn't until talking to Mark's friends who were older than I was at the time that I realized, you know, and then heard the stories of what had happened with Roger and Johnny. I mean, he handed me his brother's saxophone one day, and just because he wanted me to have it, he wanted me to play it. And you know, I preferred my own, so I said, you know, Mark, I really appreciate this, but you know, I feel more comfortable on my own instrument. But I mean, that was kind of when I realized the first time that he had a brother, that he no longer was alive, you know.
You do that a lot?
What's that?
Sort of hide yourself away in the songs?
Merci beaucoup tout le monde ici. Tout. Et maintenant, le moment de poésie. Comme ça. One.
By spring of '92, I was able to come back and start playing. But for whatever reason, it wasn't quite the same. Mark and I there was already tension around the whole thing. It was why I'd been gone.
Let's see. First of all, Billy Conway is the full-time drummer now, and I think there's a lot more unity in the band, and that it's reflected on the album.
Which I sort of felt like, you know, it was one of those, it had never been discussed.
Sharks patrol these waters. Sharks patrol these waters. Hey, don't let your fingers dangle in the water.
It was like pulling teeth to discuss anything. And that just wore on me. And I think it wore on Mark too. I mean, he, like I say, for all his cool hipster vibe, when you scratch the surface, it really wasn't there.
People thought that because of his persona, you know, and the music was sort of very low, and he kind of cultivated this persona in some sense, and the media also just sort of ran with it. His last name, most people couldn't believe his name actually was Sandman.
Don't you worry about the Day-Glow Orange Life Preserver. It won't save you. It won't save you. Swim for the shore just as fast as you were able to swim like a motherfucker.
He could get quite tense. He could get uptight. He wanted things to be easy in the sense that he wanted things done his way.
When you suffer a lot of loss in a family, the impulse to, you know, to self-pity or to mythologize your pity somehow, or to just give in to the sorrow of it, he sort of had the opposite reaction. You know, it's kind of like it puts into relief the fact that you're alive. What are you gonna do?
Swim, swim, swim.
Mark could be the biggest asshole in the world, and I definitely had tons of fights with Mark, and tons of differences, and for quite a while, I felt bitter towards Mark because I felt like, he had really. I don't feel it this way so much anymore, but I felt almost like he had this plan. He goes, "Oh, this guy, how's he getting these gigs? How's he? Well, I'll hook up with this guy. See how it works. Blah blah blah. So I kind of felt like he crawled up my back to get where he got."
Mark was a super talented guy and a really intelligent guy and a lot of fun to be around, but he could be a total dick. And there were a couple of occasions in the span of my working with him where he was such a dick that I just said, you know what, I got to take a break.
Fast as that, the scene's just too. Now, the ever-glorious now, the ever-present now. Dredged in flour and deep fat fried and cooled on paper towels and then devoured. I spent 15 years in a life raft. 15 years. Now I got something to say. Stay in your lifeboats, people. Stay in your lifeboats. It's murder out there, murder out there. Sharks patrol these waters. Sharks patrol these waters. Hey, don't you worry about the day-glow orange life preserver. It won't save you, it won't save you. Swim for the shore just as fast as you were able to swim. Come on and swim.
And, when you're in a band with somebody, there's lots of tension, and, it's easy to just see all you see is this other person thwarting you. And that's how he felt about me, too, a lot of times. He was like, how can you be so stupid as to think that this is a good idea, and vice versa.
They went to Detroit to do a radio station, one of these big, play in front of a ton of people kind of radio station gigs, and he came back kind of all puffed up and rock starred out and, insulted us, and I told him to fuck off.
Point is, I think a lot of people thought of him as cold and cool and aloof and inaccessible, but he was just relaxed and waiting for something to spark his interest.
His relationships with Billy and Dana was beautiful because they were three, and he had this thing, the Twine Men, which was a cartoon that he drew, and it was all about the difficulties of relationship and being in a band, and how the three of them would come together, and they'd be rolled up in a ball of twine. And there's a fantastic comic series, that came out of that whole concept. It was Mark's concept of how he viewed his band, and they'd be all twined up together, and then sometimes things would unravel and they'd come apart, but no matter what, they'd always end up rolled up back together. And that was really his relationship with Billy and Dana. I think that his musicians were his band of brothers, and that was his family, and the musical community was his family, and that was what he always came home to. They were in the family of musicians and artists and creators, and he took care of them. He loved them.
Agora vamos tocar uma canção chamada Cure for Pain.
Well, we're just beginning our encores right now, ladies and gentlemen. All the extra bonus songs begin right now. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, gente. Fantástico. Obrigado. Para vocês.
Tout ça va? I don't know.
Here's a song called Cure for Pain, and it goes like this.
Muito obrigado. Muito, muito, muito obrigado. Bonne nuit, mon petit.
No, he would tell us when he got acclaim as a musician. He would send us notices and tell us to listen or invite us to come. He did invite us to come to his gigs.
He didn't pay any attention to it because it didn't seem conceivable to us. It turned out later that it was true.
Good morning. We went out last night. Stayed up pretty late. We can see that.
We never gave him credit for being a musician in that sense. We didn't have any feeling for it.
I mean, his father's a businessman, and Mark was an incredibly shrewd businessman. He may have been creative. I mean, he was very creative, but he was also very shrewd. And I felt like his father would really kind of could relate to him on that level.
He and Sabine sort of became, closer together and more committed. I think his idea of family, also became more important to him, his own biological family. And he was making more attempts to be at home with his mother and father. And
he was living a slightly more conventional life or something with me that his mother could relate a little bit more. We had them over for dinner, and she just was thrilled to see that the house was set up nicely and that we could set a nice table. And so it meant a lot to her. It was important.
And I just think, after the fact, having read Tell's book, having a better understanding of what they went through as parents to lose, two boys, I just can't imagine going on from there.
Last night I told a stranger all about you. They smiled patiently with disbelief. I always knew
fact that they might not have been, you know, as aware of what Mark was doing, and that Mark maybe wasn't so keen on bringing them into what he was doing.
I'm proud to have known you for the short time that I did. Proud to have been a step up on your way. Proud to be a part of your illustrious career. And I know you did it all in spite of me.
I understand, you know, and I think at the end they started to come to terms and get a little bit more closer to each other, and that was good to see. It was a softening of Mark that I hadn't seen the time that I knew him.
You seem so close, but yet so cool. For a long time I thought that you'd be coming back to me. Those kind of thoughts can be so cruel, so cruel.
Well, he said to tell, I did it for you, Mom.
I wrote that in a book.
Well,
And I know you did it all in spite of me. In spite of me.
Palestrina is it predates Roman culture. It's a little village on top of a mountain that's impossible to get to. No trucks, only like a pickup truck can, like a little tiny pickup truck can even get up there.
Actually, Palestrina is one of the most ancient towns in Italy. It's pre-Roman. So this city, this little town is very, very old. My main job actually with Morphine and with the other bands was picking them up at the airport, so the welcoming part, and then bringing them to the festival and start making them feel comfortable there.
Billy, Mark, and myself, having just come from Portugal, it was really, really hot, and it was just, wow, we finally got a chance to stop for a minute. And, you know, sitting under the trees up there, drinking a glass of wine and just thinking, wow, this is great. This is fantastic. How do we not know about this?
People that now are 40, 45 and they have son and they still come here, and then there are people like me that are 24 or people 18, 19 that just come to help. This is the good thing because we don't do this for money, so we just do this for passion.
He felt a sense of connection to these people before, you know, in his decision to come.
We appreciate the community life, and we consider ourselves as a family.
I thought there were gonna be these rock stars coming in, and instead I got to the airport and there were happy people, smiley, very, very easy, and Mark was very easy himself.
And as soon as I met him, you know, I felt so comfortable with him.
He just was touched by their enthusiasm and their passion for music. Something in them just stirred him.
He started speaking Italian straight away, and the whole trip from the airport to Palestrina, he was like, and how do you say this? How do you say that?
What's this place? What is it about? What's the festival? Tell me, tell me.
He wanted to know how people lived here.
He started to you know, tell us about his life. He told everything about his life. That he was working in Alaska as a fisherman, you know, all those things. By the end of the day, we almost knew everything.
Di realizzare le attrezzature tecniche e scientifiche che permetteranno all'Europa il suo posto nella corsa allo spazio.
It was brutal. It was like about 100 degrees. We did an early sound check. I remember hearing the bass and the drums being played at the same time. Oh shit, I'm late for sound check. And then I'm on my way down and I see Billy there. I said, what are you doing here? I thought you were playing drums. He goes, I'm not playing drums.
Stop electric cigarette, love baby, hotel rock and roll, discotheque electric super sax.
We went down the stage and there's Mark sitting on the drum chair, you know, boom, kick, boom, kick. It's like just playing the drums and the bass at the same time while sitting in the drum throne. It was just like, wow, he's ready to go. You know, he wants to play. This is great. He's excited. He's happy.
Well, a lot of people. Over here, it's crowded. People sitting everywhere.
Come on, electric super sex. Come on, electric super sex.
And it was an amazing night. Really hot.
I guess it was about 7 songs in, and we started Super Sex, and I just remember being on stage left and looking over and kind of seeing Mark's knees buckle and just not really putting it together, you know, that he was having a hard trouble. He just fell over backwards with his bass still attached to him, and he hit the ground, and the bass hit the ground, and the bass amp just reverberated. And I just remember putting my sax down and going over there and just yelling at him to hang in there, you know, hold on.
And then the silence. That's what I remember. 5,000 people in silence.
Sandman, the lead singer and bassist of the Boston-based trio, suffered a fatal heart attack on Saturday, July 3rd, while performing at a music festival near Rome, Italy. His death was a shock to those who knew him. He was only 46 years old and was not known to have any serious health problems or heart condition.
I was faced with the challenge and the task of telling his family, you know, Bob and Tel Sandman, and his sister, and Sabine.
When this truck pulled up to the house I was staying in, this guy got out with a piece of paper and said, you know, is Sabine here? It took a while to really just absorb the details or find out what happened. When the news got out and was in the papers, it just started trickling back from people outside of our circle that people thought it was a drug-related death. But anyone who knew him knew that that's just something that he didn't believe in at all. He had survived and his brothers had not, so he really did not have any interest in drugs on that level. You know, we were all in absolute agreement that there was no doubt to the fact that he died from some kind of heart trouble.
And then what happened next, you know, was really important to us. Then a colleague shouting and crying at the moon at night there, 5 o'clock in the morning, you know. We tried to be close to them, ease their pain as much as it would be possible, if it would ever be possible. And that's what it happened. always done, basically. Simply being cared towards somebody who was living maybe the worst moment in their lives.
They immediately told us what had happened. And, I mean, I'm not really too sure how to describe how stunned I was, but we didn't know what to do.
And the next day, sitting on the couches, the next band that was coming in was Queens of the Stone Age. And I had never heard of them before. But as they had been alerted to what had happened on their way in from the airport, and they got to the hotel, and as they were coming in, they just immediately somehow knew what to say.
I went up to Dana and said, whatever you want us to do. Doesn't matter if it's play or not play, or help or not help, like sit up all night, whatever you want to do.
They're like, no, you have to do it, you have to play. This is the way it should be. You know, the show must go on. As hokey as that sounds, it's really the best way to honor, you know, Mark is to keep rocking, keep playing. And they just, I remember I didn't go down to the stage because I couldn't go back down. But I remember sitting in my hotel room alone, just listening to the Queens of Stone Age playing. And it just sounded like the Marines had landed, you know. It felt like the American Red Cross had just come, and it was just kind of an emotional airlift.
I don't think I've ever tried so hard to play, you know, trying to like muster up something or figure out how do I do more than I normally would do? How do I, you know, I don't even think we necessarily played well because we tried so hard. I mean, I think it was okay, but I just remember being like, how can I do this more, you know?
And just thinking to myself, this is the best fucking music I've ever heard in my life. This is like getting in a Camaro and stepping on the gas and going as fast as you possibly can. You know what I mean? This is what I really need right now.
I just, you know, it was such a crazy thing. I don't want to ever go through that again.
You really have to cling to what really speaks to you and what really is the right thing, and doing what you can to pick yourself up and keep on and move, you know, and do what's right in the memory of your friend.
Dana Collin, ladies and gentlemen. Grazie mille. You know, I just wanted to say something. You know, it's been 10 years, and I just felt like I should probably attempt to say something in your language.
What really happened when Mark died was a really close and tight musical community just got tighter.
Well, you know, at Mark's funeral, to watch his parents, to understand, to watch his sister, and to be like, this woman has laid 3 sons in the grave? What the fuck? You gotta be, you know, you couldn't wrap your head around the pain.
It forced people to look at each other and celebrate the fact that we had each other, and we had a family, and we had a community, and we had each other to get through losing him.
Here goes. Deciamo siamo venuti a Palestrina con I Morphine.
Instead of blowing apart, it got closer. People depended on each other more. They helped each other through what was clearly a hard time for all kinds of people in all kinds of places.
Why? Why so much tragedy in one family? It was unbearable.
But I always felt that one of the most amazing things about his music. Sorry.
È chiaro che questo è un posto speciale, un luogo sacro. Ancora non sappiamo quanto sacro sarebbe diventato.
Were we surprised at his success? Yes. Were we pleased? Yes.
We were really most surprised after he died, when all the magazine and newspaper articles poured forth, lauding his career, about which we knew relatively little.
You know, they just didn't understand the emotional connections. There was a real emotional disconnect, and part of me thought, you know, the way that Billy and Dana approached them, you know, with so much love and so much deference and so much, you know, such an open heart. And I thought, wow, here's an opportunity. These two boys that were kind of like brothers to Mark, in a sense, surrogate brothers. Here they have an opportunity to form kind of this like beautiful bond with these two men who loved their son. Having lost all of these sons, I thought that they're like, you know, but that almost seemed just ridiculously romantic. Like, how could we possibly think something so beautiful could happen?
It's interesting how over the years the various combinations of the things people have said about it and the things, you know, how your memory puts things together in a certain way that I hardly ever think about it without thinking about what Joe Strummer said, which is if you're a musician and you love what you're doing and your time comes, and it happens when you're doing what you love in a beautiful place on a beautiful night. That's what poetry's for, you know?
Quando Mark si è lasciato, voi ci avete abbracciato. Dimenticheremo mai il calore che ci avete donato. Ora con i nostri figli siamo tornati a casa a Palestrina per cantare all'amore e per ricordare. Grazie.
He was somewhere between 21 and 45, and no one really knows. No one ever knew how old Mark was. Very Dorian Gray was a Mark Sandman.
You're the night light, a little girl lost in the woods. You're a folktale, the unexplainable.
He would have been very popular right now with the vampire craze, but they found out he was actually a vampire. He's 500 years old when they buried him.
That keeps the curtains closed.
I woke up at 6 a.m. to just one of those kind of thunderstorms where it was just, you know, cracks, just thunder, just explosions, like literally woke me up.
I can't make it on my own.
At 6:15 or something, my girlfriend called and said, Sandman died. So I kind of figured there was a lot of stuff like that that happened to a lot of people. I mean, you may find as you talk to people that they all had their little weird thing that happened. I'm perfectly willing to believe he was throwing thunderbolts at me just to, on the way out, just like, fuck you, you know?
I hope you're waiting for me across your carpet of stars. You're the night light. You're the bedtime story, the one that keeps the curtains closed. And I hope you're waiting for me, 'cause I can't make it on my own. I can't make it on my own.
Can't say much about any of that. It's just that, like, you know, Jeff Buckley passed, and that was really hard. Sandman passed, and Elliott Smith. It's like you know, you take the three most original musicians of a generation and remove them from that. It's like at a certain point you have to you got to throw up a white flag, you know.
I miss him much, though. He was a very happening cat.
lost a brother.
And he and Sabine had put some money down on a house. They were going to get married. He was going to settle. He was going to write a will and contracts for the group and all that sort of stuff.
When they got back, but it never happened.
He never came back.
Unknown, on the world of old, you're the sounds I never heard before. Off the map where the wild things grow, another world outside my door. Here I stand, I'm all alone. Drive me down the pitch black road. Lila, you're my only home, and I can't make it on my own. You're a bedtime story, the one that keeps the curtains closed. And I hope you're waiting for me, 'cause I can't make it on my own. I can't make it on my own. I wanna go home. I've been waiting here all night. I've been waiting here for a long time. I've been waiting around all night. I've been waiting around since I don't know how long. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. I've been waiting around all night. Hey Frank, hey Frank, hey Frank, I wanna go home. I wanna go I've been ready to go for a while. Do you know what time it is? Do you know what time it's getting to be? Do you know how late it's getting to be? Hey Frank, hey Frank, hey Frank.